Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. It's been quite some time since I've been able to post anything with substance, and I'm finally happy to report that I've made some progress on the TL12 wheel loader. And here we are in my new barn, which I may or may not have shown in the last video. It's still a work in progress too, but what we're here for right now is this beauty. This is a Tractomotive TL12, later absorbed by Allis-Chalmers, used Allis-Chalmers components. I do not know the serial number for this thing. It's very hard to read and I haven't been able to decipher it, but this model should be somewhere 58, 59 vintage. They were bought out by Allis-Chalmers in 1960, and then that was the basis for the AC wheel loader program. But the reason I'm here today is to show you what we've got in here. If you know anything about these, which you may not, they're not very common, but these started out with a 226 cubic inch gas engine. The early ones would be the same as a WD-45 tractor, and the later ones used the D17 engine. What I've got here is a 4BT Cummins swapped into this. Now, when I got this thing, I did not have a skid loader and I planned on using it quite a bit, and the gas engine was toast, so I decided that instead of buying a rebuild kit that I would just swap in some kind of diesel. Well, after, I don't even know, 5, 6, 7 years now, finally got something done. But this right here is the original hydraulic pump that powers the power steering and fluid to the converter. Now, on factory settings, this pump is actually on the other side, but in order to make it work with this engine, I mounted it on this side and made longer hoses. Some things left to do on this. You'll notice the platform up here. I do have the side panels. They're laying off to the side, but since I'm still kind of in testing mode, make sure everything's going to work before we start buttoning things up. That's why I don't have them on yet. But if you take a look here, this is not the factory seat setup. This is just something I had laying around to be able to sit up there. But there's actually a cushion seat and a cushion back, and then a small kind of frame that goes around the back side. I don't have any of that, so I'm going to have to figure something out there. These are 1424 road grader tires. It is four-wheel drive. Here's a view from around the front. You'll have to excuse my leftover boards there in the bucket. Always trying to clean up around here. Like I said, the barn isn't quite finished. You can see it's a mess, but too many projects at once. I believe this is listed as a 1 1/8 or a 1 1/4 yard bucket. The cutting edge has seen better days, but I do have some bolt-on teeth that came off of a 6G track loader bucket that will go right on there. They use the same teeth. Here's a view from the other side. This is the factory nameplates here. The panel goes right along here, and I don't know, they must have had at one time on this some kind of heat houser for the operator, but all that was long gone, of course, when I got it. Coming around this side, the exhaust is right here. This, of course, is just temporary. I plan to run that up and out of the hood here and back that way, but I don't know, it is kind of loud, so I may run it to the back and run a muffler. Haven't decided yet. This here is, of course, the intake, and not using it yet, just running it for short periods of time to make sure it's going to work. Here's the alternator on the serpentine belt for the 4BT. This, I did have to modify the bracket just because this alternator is very close to the hose set up on this cylinder, but it is going to work there. One thing about this, I did use the factory radiator, and I had to modify the cool water inlet here out of the bottom of the radiator to fit hoses that would fit into the bottom of the radiator. That was kind of a Rube Goldberg setup, I guess, but to make it work, that's what I had to do. Things left to do, if you can see on the other side, the wiring, obviously, it's basically cobbled together just to make sure it's going to run. There is a support brace that goes between this frame rail here and the one on the other side, but the oil pan is different on this engine, so I'm going to have to either modify it or make another one, which is more work, but I don't like the idea of really messing up the factory component, so I don't know, maybe not on that piece, I'm not sure. What else? It does have power steering. It's not the greatest. I suppose it's technically not power steering, it's power assist, but it's run that pump on the other side feeds the steering gear up front, and then that feeds the oil to this cylinder via drag link to this wheel and the other wheel. It does work. It's not anything to write home about, but it is better than manpower steering. This is the hood, the original air cleaner hole, the battery tray opening here, which I do not have the piece here, but that's just a piece of square sheet metal. That'll be no problem to fabricate. This is the original exhaust hole for the 226 cubic inch gas engine, and of course the radiator back here. So the plan is, with this turbocharged diesel, the plan is to run the air cleaner up here on the hood somehow, and then feed clean air into here and across to this side over here to the turbo. And then I guess if I run the exhaust up, it will have to come up right here and back. So we'll see how that's gonna go. One thing I did have to do on this, I did get the grill back in. It's been off for quite some time. This thing is really heavy. Gosh, it must weigh 500 pounds. I did have to, because of the way of the 4BT is compared to the original gas engine, I don't know if you can see that. It's a horrible view with the lighting right now, but that is a electric fan, so it's wired in, it does work. I have no idea how it's going to hold up, but I guess we're going to find out. Something else I need to do also, you can see this is an original hose here. It's not leaking, but it's not very pretty. But there is a couple of grease hoses. This has a forward and a reverse clutch, and they're both powered at the same time. So pushing the lever forward gives you your forward speed, and pushing the lever backwards, or pulling I should say, puts you in reverse. Now there is a 4-speed transmission. Let me take you up here. Right here, see the shift pattern, 1, 2, 3, 4. Your bucket tilt and your boom raise and lower. This is your forward and reverse right here. It's just an over center clutch. There's 2 clutches. Put new gauges in here. Hour meter. This is the original light switch. I do not like the way this key turned out here, so I'm going to redo that. The hydraulic tank is located directly underneath the operator seat, so I'm sure that's nice and toasty in the wintertime. I don't know if we can see down in there, but there's a grease hose that goes to each clutch, and originally those hoses were mounted in this side panel, and you had to grease them down here, and you talk about a pain. One of them broke anyway. I couldn't get it loose, and I ended up breaking the hose. So what I'm going to do is mount some kind of bracket right here with 2 grease hoses. That way you can grease both clutches from right here. It's easy to access, and they're not in the way of taking on or off these panels, which I hope I don't have to do anyway. But since this thing had sat before I got it, you know, everything was rusted and couldn't get it off. Right or wrong here, this is my fuel setup. Since this was a gas originally, we only had a fuel line to the engine. This is now the return line, and I created and welded in a sump for the diesel engine here, and this is a shut-off valve with a new line all the way back. This thing does have 2 factory lights here in the front, and there's one back here behind the grill. I don't know how effective that is, but there is a bracket back there where apparently it has been its entire life. It's got a hitch and this cool Tractomotive logo here cast into this heavy piece on the back of this thing. And yeah, so anyhow, hopefully gonna be making some more videos about the last few pieces of getting this thing together and making the air cleaner mount and getting it mounted and running the exhaust, and then hopefully we can put this bad boy to use. So yeah, anyhow, been a long time coming, but we're finally getting close. So if you're interested in this thing, why, leave me a comment. I know they're not very popular at all, or not popular I should say, but not very common. One thing, I have not been able to locate any kind of service manual for this machine. Now you can find service manuals for the later machines. I believe it's serial number 2003 and up, which would be when they started what they call the Group 3 loaders. The Group 3 loaders did not have this long bar here. They had a square front. The cylinder for the dump was up here, and they ran like a Z-bar linkage. So it really doesn't look all that similar, other than it's about the same size of machine. But that's how you can tell the difference. And so I guess that's where we're at. So till the next video, we'll see you then. Oh, back again here. One thing I didn't mention, I believe this hole was made by the previous owner because the nose cone broke off of the starter and it must have wedged some pieces in here. I'm not 100% sure, but there is no oil in here. There's nothing in here. The converter is probably from here forward. This is just an open cavity, half of it. There's a shaft that drives this. I have a picture of the custom-made coupler from the Cummins engine to the input shaft of the torque converter. This is a 100% fabricated adapter plate. I did not want to destroy the original. I will post some pictures of that also. Yeah, so if you have any questions, why, drop some comments. Thanks.